What's up, everybody? Well, on a podcast now. I'm Alex, and this video I wanted to talk about those second-tier PlayStation studios. And, we bring them up so often, but I really want to make a video of the importance of them and why the, media molecules, why Bend, why Bluepoint, why they can be so important and why it's so essential, I think, for them to hit whatever they do next. And really, I chose those three. I really want to focus just on those three. They all are very similar in terms of kind of what they're coming from. All three are really, in a way, looking for a rebound. And, it's tough to say like they have like one more chance. Media Molecule might be a little bit separate in that department, but they do have an energy where it's like they need something. Like whether PlayStation would actually be looking to shut them down. Now, remember years ago when PlayStation was doing kind of an analysis of, every studio, there were a lot of rumors that Media Molecule was right on that line, that they, it was a 50-50 if they were going to be one that was chosen to be shut down, and they were saved, and they were not, but they were on the bubble like 2-3 years ago. And fast forward to now and fast forward to the next game, they really, for the safety and health of their studio, they need something. And then you look at, and by the way, they actually completed their last game, in terms of Dreams, something that was honestly pretty magical, pretty special, but just didn't hit. And they've always been a studio, that's relied on talent and just doing things that are out of the box. I mean, you go to their major and really only success in terms of sales and performance, right? Little Big Planet and some of those games, well, really Little Big Planet 1 and 2, they did extremely well. And that was, in terms of money and sales, that was about as good as it ever got, because Dreams did not perform. But we're not talking like Little Big Planet is not out there pushing like Uncharted or Last of Us numbers, right? Like they've always been kind of, let's allow this studio to just be weird and to just do something that almost feels indie, but we have them as part of our team. And I love that. By the way, that was an amazing era of having, Little Big Planet. Back in that era, it felt like PlayStation was more willing to allow teams to, there's rumors that they've acquired like Giant Squid, who's the makers of Sword of the Sea, and they did Abzu and The Pathless. Like, I actually kind of like that move, if that's true, if it ends up happening, because like I like those AA or even AAA, and like Media Molecule is maybe not structured like a AAA, and they act more AA or indie, and I just like the ability that they're able to kind of do whatever, at least up until this point. So that's them. They need that rebound, and that's something that I really hope for, and I'm really hopefully excited, to see whatever they do next. So that's them, and then you have Bend and Bluepoint. So let's talk about those two individually, and I'll talk about why it's important just in general for this like tier 2 to do well. So, okay, let's go Bluepoint first. Bluepoint has been, I think, just a severely mismanaged team, over the last, 5 years, right? Demon Souls comes out, and I think it works. I think it upsets some people, but I think generally, they were on that track, and I think they've been long overdue to do their own thing. I really don't understand, personally, why PlayStation has never looked at them and said, let's really figure out how we can make this the ultimate remake studio while also allowing you to do your own thing. Remember, there were rumors back when, really, I guess back when the PS5 came out, that it was like Demon Souls as a remake, and then they were going to do like a Miles Morales, like a 6 to 8 hour game of their own. And I really, that was a rumor, and obviously it did not, they were going to do a God of War live service game, right? And it's like, why have they never been looked at and said, look, you go back years, and when even they did remasters to start, obviously they did remakes after, they are one of the best ones, and there are absolutely teams out there, not just within PlayStation, there are teams out there that specialize, and they're just really good at remastering or remaking, and by the way, you can survive as a studio like that because it really doesn't take a lot of money to do it, and if they work, you make so much money back that you're just printing money half the time with these things. So I just don't get why they were so talented at doing that, and they might still be very talented, by the way, at doing it, why they were never looked at and said, okay, let's just roll this remake train because we have plenty of games that can get remade. You keep doing that, and then also let's try to figure out a way for you to do kind of your own thing, literally a new IP. I'm talking new IP. Like, look, the God of War thing, I think once it was announced, and I think as the weeks went, the months went, even now maybe a year or so, like, I do think people look back, and I think people will probably continue to look back with a little bit of like, well, what could it have been? Like, not that we necessarily needed it. I think it would just continue to add to this, PlayStation live service push that I think is becoming more and more annoying for people. But there is even a part of me, which, by the way, I have talked so much about live service and stuff like that. Even from me, though, like, I actually do get a little bit more interested. Like, I do wonder what that game would have looked like. And would I have taken it? I mean, well, I buy a lot of games, and I support a lot of games, even if maybe I'm not for them, originally. So, maybe I would have, and maybe it would have turned out well. I mean, I've said before, like, I think Faction should have happened, and I think that Spider-Man multiplayer one should have happened. I think they would have been successes in their own kind of sphere, maybe not breaking out into the larger, like, Helldivers 2 crowd, but I think they would have worked. So I'm not strictly opposed to them. But okay, so they cancel that, and now here we go onto their own thing. So I did see, and one of the things that actually started me thinking about this video, there was a job posting for Bluepoint where they're looking for third-person melee, like that kind of angle. So, you think about it, third-person melee, like they were doing a God of War thing, so that kind of lines up with maybe they're sticking in that same category, but also just think about Demon Souls even before it, like, so hopefully, again, in my opinion, it should just be their own, a new game. Like, I do think it's best that you kind of have them do remakes as well, just as really a safety net that is such an easy safety net, but you probably eventually want them to break through and be able to create their own thing. And it's also something that's confused me, because it's like they've remade or remastered so many classics that they, like, you really have to learn those things, I imagine, when you do it, right? Like, you have to become a student of Shadow of the Colossus, and you really have to understand it in order to remake it as well as they did, or Demon Souls, or anything. So why haven't they ever taken those lessons and said, well, we know how to craft a story, we know how to craft a gameplay system, we know how to do levels. Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, they have never learned that, and I think they have. I think they've really just never been given the chance to. So they're, Team 2. I'm really looking for, because I think they kind of have a very high ceiling, because they just have never done it before. Now, they also could have a massive failure in their hands, because maybe they just don't know how to do it. But I feel like it's a super low floor and a super high ceiling. It's kind of, they have like a massive range at Bluepoint, okay? And then there's Bend. Good old Bend. Well, they are not what we once knew of them as when they did Golden Abyss and all this stuff. No, I mean, Days Gone, you can say it 1,000 times, like, Days Gone, I think was a good game, a solid foundation, for what could have come. I think a second Days Gone probably would have been insanely good. Days Gone really is that classic, like, 7.5 out of 10 game that has a lot of things, like, set that are really, again, foundationally solid, but it just, in a lot of ways, it doesn't take that step. And that's okay, because it's the first game. And by the way, the game they made before that was on a screen that was this big, a PS Vita, right? So I will give them the benefit of the, I always will give them the benefit of the doubt for Days Gone, and I think that a Days Gone 2 should have been the right, or, that's what they should have done. It should have been Days Gone 2. So here we are. Their game's canceled as well. They seem the most stuck in their ways. They remind me, I've been watching the Buffalo Sabres, a team that's been terrible for 14 years that for some reason I've watched for 15 years. And it reminds me of them because they just continue to do the same thing over and over, and it never works. But I mean, okay, all jokes aside, it is what worries me about Bend, right? Because they do Days Gone, they get into this live service trap, they cancel it, and then all job postings indicate they're doing another live service. So they're an interesting one, because, again, I never really want to write off. I didn't write off Concord until I guess the game came out. I haven't played the beta, at the time, or whatever it was when it came out. So I don't want to write it off and say, okay, I don't really like to do that with any game, to be honest with you. But they are ones that, to me, especially when I look at those three, they are absolutely the most stuck in their ways, where it's like, all right, well, why are we doing this 2 times in a row? They also seem to be the most dysfunctional with, the leadership leaving after Days Gone. So they're really kind of starting from scratch with the studio. And, there was a lot of issues. And I think compared to Media Molecule, like, actually high-level people have left Media Molecule, but I think they still have some left. And I think they've retained, for Media Molecule, they've retained the identity of what they do. Bluepoint, to be fair and honest, it's very hard to tell. They could have lost it, or it could still be there. For Bend, it feels like they lost it. It feels like after Days Gone, they lost what they were, they tried to reinvent, they failed, and then now, Now they're just trying again. They're not reinventing a second time. They're just trying it again. And I just don't love that, that situation that we're in. But okay, what's the through line of all three? When we talk about PlayStation, right, we talk about Insomniac, we talk about Sucker Punch, obviously Ghost of Yotei is a hot topic, we talk about Santa Monica, Naughty Dog. I mean, really those four. I mean, you got Asobi who did Astrobot that I really think should be included in like a top 5 kind of, maybe one day I'll rank all the PlayStation studios. They've got a really good, like unbelievably good actually, like top 4, right? If you're doing, again, sports analogy, like prospects, they got a great top 4. And you got rising stars, right? You even have a rising star, I would say, in Fire Sprite, which could be included even in this video, because if they're really making Until Dawn 2 and they're kind of joining that narrative, party that PlayStation has been developing for a long time, they are kind of like a rising prospect type thing, but they haven't proved it yet, right? There's still the jury out on that. They need this second tier, though. And when we talk about like the PS5, in my opinion, just being an underwhelming, generation, and we're getting so close to PS6, and it feels like we haven't really even embraced the PS5's generation all that much. I honestly think in large part it is because of the second tier. Because now the first tier has made mistakes. I mean, Naughty Dog being absent is one of the biggest blunders you could ever. It's a massive problem, because they are one of your probably top 2, top 3 studios, maybe even your top 1, and they were absent besides releasing The Last of Us 13 times, right? Like, it's unacceptable, okay? So I'm not saying their top is absolutely perfect, but they have largely held down the fort. Actually, Insomniac has done a great job at holding down the fort. They really need that second tier. And I mean, it's actually as simple as that. They just need the next wave of games. And here's the thing. I mentioned Media Molecule, and I mentioned the Little Big Planet era. That is what I thought was so... And I always go back to the PS3 era. I'm biased. If you guys watch this, I guess you put up with that with me, right? But the thing that was so special to me about the PS3 era that they really lost, I think, as time went on, is those kind of tiers and what you could get from them. You could have that tier 2. I don't think anybody would put Little Big Planet in tier 1. But the thing is, Little Big Planet was maybe just as special as some of those tier 1 games. So you think about like the Uncharted's of the world, or God of War was kind of, wrapping up with 3, and then they did Ascension. Like, you had your heavy hitters. You had them trying with Resistance. You had the wrap up of Killzone, right? Like, you were doing things. I mean, even right there, those are kind of different tiers too. Like, I don't think in terms of performance you'd put Resistance with Killzone, even though I think Resistance is better than Killzone. And that's kind of the situation. That's kind of the good thing about it, is you had all of these different waves, and you had like Japan being able to do like Puppeteer or Gravity Rush. Like they had these like staggered tiers, but you could really get some gems in tier 2 or tier 3 that could honestly beat tier 1 half the time, and you were never really expecting it, but it's what made the PlayStation ecosystem so strong. That's really what this entire video has been leading to. So that's what we're really, I think, missing now, is we don't have hidden gems. You know what we have as a hidden gem? Actually, one studio I forgot to mention throughout this, Housemarque. Housemarque is another, I would say, Media Molecule where I think they've retained their identity and they're being allowed to kind of just take that next step. You can tell there's more budget for Returnal or Saros than there was for, Nex Machina or even Resogun, right? They're a good example. I think that's also kind of a tier 2 team that has actually performed. I guess really Media Molecule, Bend, and Bluepoint are the tier 2 teams that have done nothing. And they're needed, because I think having Housemarque kind of proves what that tier can do. Returnal has honestly become one of the best PS5 exclusives. It is, to some people, it's better than Spider-Man. To some people, it's better than God of War Ragnarok. Like, that's the power. And if you have Ben doing a Days Gone 2, say like they actually did, alternate universe, that might have been better than some of the tier 1 games. But the issue is just they haven't done it. That's the big problem. And I think I like how this video has come together, by the way, because I want all this. But like, it's exciting because it's talking about the prospect, I think, of all these studios. They've got a good thing at the top. And again, like I think with Fire Sprite and Housemarque, you got a good thing in like tier 2. You probably would put Astro in tier 2. Like, maybe they're not like the big leagues. They have a smaller team. But yet again, Sucker Punch is a smaller team. Like, Sucker Punch is not like Naughty Dog, and it's not like Santa Monica, and it's not like Insomniac. They are built more as like a higher AA studio than they are a AAA. So, if you really want to look at it like that, I guess you can separate the tiers, but it's what you need. You need a Ghost of Yotei to almost be better than like a God of War Ragnarok, to push Santa Monica, to push the big guns on top, because you have those tier 2 games that are equal or even better than it. You need Saros to actually be one of the best games to say, hey, this is what you can do when you have all of these studios kind of firing and doing their own thing. So I really think it's important. I think those 3 teams, again, Fire Sprite with Until Dawn 2, that's a lot of potential. Saros has a lot of potential, but you need a Little Big Planet success from Media Molecule. You need Ben to honestly figure it out. That would be my key for those 2 teams. And then, Bluepoint as same thing. Well, really, figuring it out is the thing, the through line through all of them. But you want that Little Big Planet success with Media. You want something, to kind of signal they're back, like put you back on track with Bend. And then Bluepoint, kind of the same thing, but even just to kind of retreat and do a remake would actually be a very safe and easy option for Bluepoint that would just kind of get like the gears turning. So I don't think it's all that hard, but obviously you're dealing with multiple teams and hundreds of people, so it actually is pretty difficult. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.